The NFL Combine has come and gone, and free agency is only 1 week away. Which positions will the Panthers prioritize during free agency, and which positions may they hold off on until the draft? We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter at Julian Council, because on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council. You can also at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in for the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And it is officially March, which means we are right here. Free agency is coming up 1 week away from today. Will be the legal negotiating period. Then on Wednesday, March 12th, will be the official start of the new league year and free agency. And the Panthers have a lot of business to get done over this week, as they got to figure out what they're going to do potentially with some contracts. Are they going to extend Jaycee Horn prior to free agency starting? Are they truly going to sit on the $31 million cap hit that Taylor Moton has in 2025? Decisions that are going to be figured out this week. So excited to finally get to this portion of the offseason. Then, of course, we'll focus fully on the draft at the end of March and all of April. The most fun time of the offseason is finally here. February, it's a long month. It's not very long, but it's very long when there's not really anything happening until you get to that final week with everybody up there in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine. And speaking of Indianapolis and people being up there, Alex Zietlow of the Charlotte Observer covers Carolina Panthers with our buddy Mike K. He is going to join us on the show today to let us know what he saw up there in Indy, his thoughts on this team heading into free agency and the draft, and just the overall vibes surrounding the Carolina Panthers. So we'll talk to Alex Zietlow here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, and as promised, Alex Zietlow, one of the esteemed beat reporters for the Charlotte Observer covering your Carolina Panthers, back here with us on Locked On Panthers, 1 week away from the start of the legal negotiating period and coming off a trip up to Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine. Alex, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning, man. I'm feeling great. You're wearing UNC blue this morning. I mean, we're just in a good mood today, aren't we?
Yeah, well, a little bit of the Carolina blue, just the swoosh, not the swoosh. You got the jump man and then the NC logo. Yeah, the heels are looking better. Still not confident about what's going to happen on Saturday when they welcome Duke at home. If they win that game, then yeah, I mean, all bets are off. This team's going to win a national title, of course, but no. We'll see what Hubert's able to do with them. But let's focus in on where the vibes actually are, I think, pretty good with the Panthers. I felt like going to this offseason, considering how the season ended as far as the win in Atlanta and the way that Bryce Young played. The biggest question they had to answer last year was whether Bryce could play at all. And first 2 weeks, looked like he couldn't. Last 9 weeks, it definitely seems like he can play more than just a little bit, and we'll see how he grows and develops this offseason heading into the 2025 season. So the fact that they have quarterback answer for this upcoming season made this offseason important, that they addressed every single need. And I feel like right now, the vibes are pretty positive. Like, how are you feeling about this organization heading into free agency and the draft in the next 2 months?
For a team that finished 5-12, dude, the vibes are remarkable. I don't really know how to explain it. I mean, we talked before the NFL draft last year, and even then, I was looking back. I was listening back to it not long ago, and I was kind of, I was a little bit of a goofy guy when saying about how much how positive and how optimistic I was for all those Panther fans out there. But it is, you said it beautifully last year, like the NFL has just a way of building optimism like no other league in this country, perhaps in the world, does. I don't exactly know why it is. I guess it's because there's so many players and so many moving parts, and like a team can be not good but have so many promising pieces around it because there's 53 guys on an active NFL roster. So I mean, perhaps that's why. But yes, to your original question, this team, there are so many good vibes around it. I mean, going back to the Bryce Young thing, all the Panthers wanted to do last year was prove that Bryce Young can be a starting quarterback. Like, like get off these expectations of will he live up to being the number 1 overall pick. It's kind of clear that the first 2 years of Bryce's tenure, like that's not what you don't pay that much for a first round pick. Those a 2-win season, a 5-win season for a first round pick. That's tough to, and then on top of that, go through 2 coaches and fire a GM. Like that's a lot of payment for a first round pick. However, they have proven at the end of the season that Bryce can be a really reliable and explosive and fun starting quarterback, which is really good. And so, like you said, that frees up the Panthers from focusing on other needs and not just worrying, okay, how can we maximize Bryce? And let's address other things that are really important. Hey, we had historically the worst defense in the league last year. How are we going to be able to stop the run? Where does that start? Does that start in the defensive front? I think so. So they got to embrace all these other things. And, we even asked about specialists this year. Last year, I don't even think we made it past the offense when talking to Dan and Dave Morgan at the NFL Combine, because that is how much needed to happen. That's as much surgery that needed to happen last year. And we got to talk about the entire roster this year, which was really cool.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it because, I mean, the Bryce thing, what he was able to do was show that they can win with him. Now, the still question remains whether they can win because of Bryce Young, and you can certainly maybe argue in that Falcons game that they won because of the way Bryce Young played, but you can win with him at this point in time. And hell, you don't have to have a quarterback that you win because of. I mean, there's very few in the league. Like you look at Josh Allen in Buffalo, the Bills win those games because of Josh Allen. Kansas City, I mean, the defense was great this past year, but they still win a lot of those games because of Patrick Mahomes. Same thing with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Philadelphia, are we saying the Eagles win these games because of Jalen Hurts every single week? I mean, he was great in the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, but he's a good player. But it's not necessarily that they're winning every week because of him. Eagles had the best constructed roster in the NFL, and like Carolina needs to be focused on doing that moving forward. Where I feel like for the better part of David Tepper's tenure, it's all been trying to find that quarterback, and it puts you in a situation where you guys are asking, "Hey, edge rusher, what are you going to do there? Corner, what are you going to do there? Safety, what are you going to do there? Defensive tackle, tight end, like kicker, punter, like a ton of questions still on this roster where had they just done things the right way before, we wouldn't be in a situation. But it looks like the quarterback's going to be the guy moving forward, at least to this season. Let's just focus on one thing before we take a pause here. I feel like, I don't know how you feel, but you talk about the defensive front, and that's both edge rusher and defensive tackle. To me, right now, edge rusher is their biggest need this offseason. The Super Bowl, that shows you it. Obviously, like defensive line, like they're going to get Derek Brown back, so that will help them in the interior. I just don't look at anybody currently on this roster. Like, no offense to Jadeveon Clowney or to DJ Wonnum, who I do think Wonnum can be a solid piece for them moving forward. But Clowney, he kind of is what he is at this point in time. There's just not anybody that any offensive coordinator team should be concerned about edge rusher wise in Carolina. And we saw that this past year. So I feel like very clearly edge rusher is the spot to address. Do you think that they do it coming up next week, or is that probably something that they wait until April, or both?
So general manager Dan Morgan told the Observer, hey, we're not afraid to double dip when it comes to addressing certain needs, particularly on defense. And double dip essentially means for him, go out and get someone in free agency and then kind of follow that up with getting someone more long-term in the draft. To me, to Alex Zietlow, you should go all in on edge rusher in the draft, because this front seven, this is a very deep front seven draft for when we're talking historically. I mean, I'm looking at a mock draft right now. like right around that 8 spot that the Panthers have, you got Michael Williams, you got James Pierce Jr., and you got Abdul Carter, say if he like falls to the Panthers somehow. And then on top of that, that's just like getting after the quarterback guys. On top of that, you got Mason Graham out of Michigan, who proved that he is like a beast in the biggest moments and can take on Big Ten guys. Like, I think that is where the Panthers should go with that number 8 pick. I don't know how you feel when it comes to should they trade back, or like, I don't know if you have been drinking the Kool-Aid that a lot of other Panthers fans have when it comes to Ted McMillan. But I think – wait, what'd you say?
Oh, I didn't know that there was a lot of people that were all about Taylor McMillan from Arizona.
Well, maybe – I mean, maybe it's just the sector of Twitter that I'm on, but a lot of people really liked him, at least really early. And I think that, and it makes sense. I mean, he's wonderful. He's a fantastic football player, but I think you need to address, like, I think you need some guys who can get after the quarterback. And so, yeah, I mean, we can dive into all these names if you want, or
let's do that. No,
okay,
let's do that. Let's talk about possibilities at 8, because on Friday when I do my mailbag episodes, I had somebody ask about getting a corner, and that could make sense. I did tell them, let's wait to see what happens in March, because I can't sit here and tell you necessarily what should be the priority. I just know right now the top priority for me in free agency and the draft for Carolina is edge rusher, but that could all be answered in the next 10 plus days, and then we get to April and it could be corner. So we'll take a quick pause and we'll come back and talk about possibilities at 8 and some guys that may make sense here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, Julian Council, Alex Zietlow from the Charlotte Observer, breaking down the Carolina Panthers offseason as we are 1 week away from the beginning of the league negotiating period, and we are 9 days? Yeah, 9 days away from doing math, from the start of the new NFL new league year, an official start of free agency. Looking at the 8th pick, as we're coming off the combine, trying to figure out possibilities there. And I found it interesting that you brought up Taylor McMillan, because apparently, according to you, in whatever sector of Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, maybe even Blue Sky, Panther fans are talking about getting him as the 8th pick at wide receiver. And I do think the Panthers need to upgrade that receiver room. I know Dan Morgan said last week that he likes the receivers that they have, and it's certainly a better situation this offseason than they were in last offseason, where it was just Adam Thielen and they needed to find some guys. And they find a down in the rough in Jalen Coker, Xavier Legette, dealing with that foot injury and the wrist injury as well all season long. He's still impressed, but you could see that he was compromised, and maybe that will lead to a better season coming up here in 2025. And, Thielen's good, but I just don't see a number 1 guy. I don't like this receiver class, honestly, Alex. And I get that McMillan's 6'5", and he can be that big body possession receiver. I also feel like JT Sanders could kind of be like that for you at tight end if you want to utilize him in that way. I don't really get that one. Like, to me, right now, without knowing what's going to happen next week and even the rest of this week, I feel like Jalen Walker is probably the pick. Considering it's not, forget that he's even a guy from the local area, but the fact that he can be an edge rusher and he can also be inside and play linebacker. And do we think Josie Jewell's going to be starting linebacker again in 2026? Maybe, maybe not. Like, that just feels like 2 birds, 1 stone if they go with that. Like, receiver at 8 in this receiver class, I don't understand that one, quite honestly. I don't know where you're at.
Yeah, no, I mean, I said it previously. I think your biggest priorities need to be on defense. The Jalen Walker thing is interesting for a variety of reasons. He's obviously really good coming out of Georgia. He's versatile, which is really important because, like, I've said this before, and I don't know if this resonated, but like, people need to, in my opinion, we need to stop trying to say, okay, this guy will work well in Evero's scheme, in his 3-4 scheme or whatever. It's like, no. Like, the Panthers are not, firstly, the Panthers defensively are not good enough to pass on wonderful talents for the excuse of, hey, he's just not going to fit in with what the defense is doing right now. They just need more talent. Secondly, the defensive coordinator, there's so much turnover in the NFL that you need guys who are versatile, and you need guys who like can play in any defense. It's also unfair to NFL talent evaluators to like try to like fit guys, like to try to like fit square. I don't know. I can't recall the
square
metaphor,
peg,
but
round hole.
Yeah, whatever, that thing. Yeah, you can't. I mean, that's unfair too. So like, I really like Jalen Walker because he is considered this versatile guy. He can really get after the quarterback, and he's proven that he can play in coverage as well. I understand the hesitancy with, okay, wait, y'all just drafted Trevin Wallace. I thought he was going to be the inside linebacker of the future. Well, the thing is you're quite old at the inside linebacker spot and on the outside linebacker spot outside of DJ Wanham, really. And old not necessarily being a bad thing, just being like, hey, these guys can like mentor the next generation of linebackers, just like, you know, Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly did with Shaq Thompson, who just departed the team. So
yeah,
and this is not great radio. I don't really see how the Panthers can go wrong if they stick with this 8 pick and they pick a defensive front 7 guy. Just like I said, because there's so many options for them. The only way they can really mess it up, I think, is if they go on the offensive side of the ball. It is a compelling question whether they should trade back or whether they should stay at 8, but I still think they should stay at 8. I'm kind of rambling.
I think it kind of depends on like what happens this next coming weeks. Like because I feel like defensive tackle, I do think they should probably go with vet there. To just go ahead and figure that one out. Like, I mean, BJ Hill could make sense. Like, Puna Ford could make sense. I mean, even apparently Javon Hargrave. I know Mike Kay's brought that up. Your colleague over there at the Observer. Like, I think they should spend money on defensive tackle for sure. To go get a veteran there, and then like. Yeah, because if they get edge rusher as well, because I know people are still like, will they trade for Myles Garrett? I don't know if the Browns are trying to do that right now. I mean, that would be a situation they need to get that done like this week because their cap situation would be beyond effed up if they do that. I don't know. Trading back makes sense now. I think just staying there at 8 for just looking at where they're at right now probably makes the most sense to me. And like I agree, like offense. I mean, Tyler Warren. I've seen people talk about Tyler Warren. Like I've seen more of that than Ted. I've seen Ted McMillan be mocked to Carolina. I think it was Eric Edholm of I don't know who he's working for now. He's the only person I saw mock him. But I have seen Tyler Warren be mocked to Carolina. And considering what Dave was saying last week about wanting versatility at tight end, I mean, this is a tight end class. There's like guys like Colson Lublin out of Michigan that could make sense for them. Gunnar Helm, who took over for JT Sanders after he left Texas, who could make sense for them. But Tyler Warren, I've seen him go right there in the top 10. Like maybe if they want to go offense, why not go there? I feel like that would make more sense to me than going with like McMillan at receiver.
Well, why not? It's because because the Panthers just invested a lot in Jatavian Sanders, who notched a career rookie year
but he was a 4th round pick. They didn't invest that much. It's a 4th round pick. It's
not invest, excuse me, but he just notched like the most receiving yards in rookie tight end history. I'm jumbling up my words, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
They also really like JT Sanders too. I know that what Dave said about Tyler kind of went viral, but also if you asked Dave about any one of those 1st round guys, he was going to give a glowing review. That's kind of,
that's kind of Dave Canales.
How he is. Yeah, that's kind of how he is. I remember last year, I think it was Vashti Hurd out of Carolina Blitz asked Dave what they thought about Jalen Coker, and he gave this review that essentially kind of made him sound like, you know, Randy Moss or whatever. I mean, Steve Smith called Jalen Coker the Tim Duncan NBA comparison. Like, okay, we're just gonna like toss that around. But
he actually played. He ended up playing well though, Alex. So
no, he did. But like, let's not forget. A couple weeks later, he didn't make the 53-man roster. I mean,
yeah,
like, guys, true. And so he like Jalen Coker being great for this Panthers team, and he was undeniably great. Don't get me wrong. Like
considering expectations.
Yes, it was considering expectations 100%. And like he did so he got elevated to the roster after Adam Thielen got hurt. That was the way that he got on this active roster. So anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that. But you talk about Tyler Warren. The Panthers should, I mean, this is just Alex Zietlow speaking. The Panthers should not take anyone on the offensive side of the ball in that 8 spot. You have it's too much for treasure trove on defense. I mean, I'm willing to go out and say that. I mean, even if they just like really load up in free agency, say they get somehow land Javon Hargrave or someone like Milton Williams out of the Eagles, who proved that like he can win a Super Bowl and he could be like a central part of a Super Bowl defense. I still think you need to invest. I still think you need to invest in the long term there. It's just too compelling of an opportunity not to. Now, what about Will Johnson at Michigan? I put out a tweet. I put out a tweet. Just let's see. Like I think he talked on Thursday or something, and so how these things work, to give some behind the scenes. How these things work is every prospect stands behind a podium and there's a microphone, and just people and then reporters and media people just kind of roam around and they ask them these questions. Most of the questions begin with something along the lines of, have you met with the Panthers yet? And what would it be like playing with Bryce Young if you're talking to an offensive player, for instance? Sure. And so Will Johnson was there, and I'm just kind of floating. My primary goal was talking to a lot of local guys, like guys from Charlotte, because there were actually quite a few Charlotteans there. But like in this particular session, there wasn't anyone. So I would just say, hey, let's listen to Will. Let's see what's happening with him. And someone asked him, hey, who are some defensive backs that you model your game after? And he mentioned a couple of them. And then one he said was Jaycee Horn. And Jaycee Horn, I love the dog he plays with, blah, blah, blah. I put out a tweet and like everyone was like, come on, guys, let's go. And it was just so funny to me, because that was like the third or fourth time this week where like Panthers fans were like, yeah, come on. Like Panthers fans want all top 10 of these guys to come to play for Carolina, bro. I promise you. Hey, and I mean, like, that's a wonderful thing. That's a great thing to think. But again, that just like can't happen.
Well, here's the thing though, like, 'cause that's what it's talking about, the hope, man. Like, this stuff is like a drug to people, especially at this point in time when this has been like a pretty quiet offseason compared to what we've become accustomed to. There was no head coaching change, no general manager change. And even though other coaching change you would have thought could have happened, and the Jerry Rivera getting fired did not happen. So nothing happened in January, nothing happened in February. Now it's like, all right, well, people are ready for like some real news to come out. What's the biggest news that's happened so far? Shaq Thompson's not coming back. I don't think there's really been.
Probably that. I mean, JJ Jansen got re-signed. If you talk to my colleague,
that's the biggest news. Yeah, that's the biggest news. Excuse me. Sorry. So yeah, that's it. JJ Jansen forever. Year 17. Loading. Let's go. No, but like I get, like, that's where like the optimism and all that comes from, is just like, oh, okay, like you sit there, you look at all, because there's a lot of people that would make sense. Like, you can make an argument for Will Johnson, because then you can shore up that corner spot for, I mean, we got to see what they do with JC. We can talk about that shortly, and with Mike Jackson as well, but they can shore that up for, maybe the next 5-7 years. It just, hopefully, you could think like the most, I don't even know if that's realistic, but I can't think of the word, but like you could potentially do that. You look at defensive tackle, you can shore that up with Derek Brown for, again, like the next 5+ years. You go edge rusher, you got that figured out for maybe the next decade when looking at some of these guys. Hell, you can make an argument for safety if you wanted to. They're at 8, probably a little bit too early for some of the guys like Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, Malachi Starks out of Georgia to get them. But if you trade back, you can get that position figured out for possibly the next decade. So there's plenty of options there at 8. But I am interested in what they're going to do maybe later on this week or even maybe today after we've done recording this, see what they do with people like Moton and his his situation, Jaycee Horn and all that. So we can take a quick pause, come back, talk about that before we get out of here on Locked On Panthers. All right, Alex. So we're talking about on the other side about Will Johnson, possibilities there at 8. That could make sense going after a corner. Talked about that on Friday. Someone asked me that for the mailbag episode here on Locked On Panthers. And I'm looking at corner. I'm really wondering, are they going to get that deal done with JC before the league year starts next week? Because I'm looking at right now over the cap, they're projecting Carolina to have $29 million in salary cap space, or 29.8. So nearly $30 million in salary cap space, which is not necessarily a ton, but it's enough if you are, I mean, I don't know if it's enough to go out there and do everything you want to do, but they can certainly try and push some of that salary cap down the road. But it's not like they're in a situation like, New Orleans, who is perennially over the cap and always in a serious issue. But Carolina, they got space. I look at Jaycee Horn. If they go out there and they are able to extend him this offseason prior to new league year starting, they save $9 million. And then you're looking at nearly $40 million of salary cap space, and you're kind of in business. Do you get any thought that they're going to do that maybe this week or next week, or they just kind of be patient with that and let things play out? Because it's not like they have to get it done. It's not, there's no franchise tax. It's not like they got it done by July. They have plenty of time, necessarily like a whole full year, to get this negotiated. Like, what is kind of the vibes you got with that situation?
Yeah, I don't I apologize. I don't exactly know. I don't have a great feel on the timeline. What I do know is that they do want Jaycee Horn in Carolina for a long time. That is a priority. If you stumble on and you draft a Pro Bowl receiver who in his first true full NFL year, he's a Pro Bowler. I mean, you want to keep him. You got to keep him. He's this organization loves him. Bottom line. A compelling question is Mike Jackson. From the sense that I've gotten from people within the Panthers organization is that they also really want to keep him. I mean, talk about a bargain. I mean, this guy was essentially traded for a 7th round pick last year and played pretty much all defensive snaps last year, which was pretty incredible. He stepped up in big moments. I think, I don't have the stats right in front of me. He finished with a couple interceptions. He too is also a pretty lovable guy in the locker room. So I think when it comes to corner, those two guys are going to be there in 2025 and probably beyond as well.
Well, I guess there's a better question asked. Are they going to let him test the market, Mike Jackson, or are they going to get that done? Because they don't have to get it done with JC now, but Mike Jackson, there is actually a deadline to get that done, opposed to letting other teams go out. I don't know what his market would be. I don't imagine it to be robust necessarily. As far as, I don't know.
I don't think that it would be advantageous.
I got you.
Hey, yeah, no, I don't imagine. Wait, yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, I got you. You're buffering, but you're fine.
So I don't imagine that Mike. Okay, all right. Well, hopefully, I think everything's fine now. I can see you blinking. I can see you laughing. All right, we're in good shape. I don't think that it would be advantageous for the Panthers to let Mike Jackson test free agency. You already have him in Carolina. Just knock it out now. I would imagine that they get him done, that they get this deal done before the legal tampering period begins next week.
Okay.
So I think that's where they're at. You mentioned Taylor Moton earlier in the show. So just some
$31 million cap.
Some numbers. Yeah, huge, ginormous. That's the bad news. The good news is that Taylor Moton is remarkably consistent. He outside of last season, he is always playing. He's always playing. And the best news on top of that, the salary cap increased to $279.2 million this year, the most it's ever been, which is natural. You're always going to have a lot. It's always going to be the most it's ever been for obvious economic reasons, but it's the most increase from year to year in NFL history. The Panthers, like you said, 29 million in cap space. That's 19th overall. You clearly, if you and Dan Morgan also at the NFL Combine kind of hinted or signaled that they were kind of in an opportune place to just kind of eat Taylor Moton's contract. In other words, like not try to restructure it or not try to extend him to like kind of lessen that cap hit. That was the impression I got. So what does that mean? That means that something has to happen. That means that you have to either go out and sign Jaycee Horn, like you were saying, or, maneuver some parts of this roster to make that happen. That is my impression. My impression is that Taylor Moton is going to stay on his current contract in 2025. So what that means, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can make that. There are a whole bunch of ways that you can make that happen. And I just said that I really think that they're going to sign Mike Jackson back. So that's another thing to consider. Also, that number 29.86 via over the cap, that's a projected cap space number. So that is based on what people at over the cap think the Panthers will do. So
we won't have the official number until next week.
I think that something like that. So like my impression, just to put a bow on it, Taylor Moton is going to stay on the same contract, and Mike Jackson is going to be signed before he can test free agency. That is just like an impression of my predictive ability. However, things will happen that always surprise you in the free agency period, because guess what? Things happen that surprise people in the front office in free agency. Things happen that surprise people in the NFL draft in the Panthers front office. So that all can happen. I kind of just rambled right there, and it was kind of a word salad.
No, hey, that makes sense. Good stuff on the insight that you think that Mike Jackson deal is going to get done. And I know Dan did kind of allude to Taylor Moton staying on that deal, that they're fine. And of course, as you mentioned, over cap, it is a projection, and they are projected to have $29.8 million cap space, whether Taylor Moton, or if they keep him on that current salary. So we'll see whether that happens or not. But all good insight, man, and appreciate you stopping by today, guys. Again, check him out over the Charlotte Observer at Alex Zietlow. It's A Zietlow05 on Twitter, right? Or X, whatever you want to call it at this point in time. Are you on Blue Sky, Alex?
It's Alex Zietlow05. But yeah.
There we go. Over on X, on Twitter, whatever. But yeah, go check them out there. Subscribe to your local paper. Respect your local media. These guys do a great job covering this team. And I appreciate you, man, stopping by today. That's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast for our Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show free over on YouTube, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and on Blue Sky at Julian Council. We're on Friday and back, answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday as we'll look at what the priority should be offensively for the Carolina Panthers during free agency here on the show on Tuesday.